nice to meet you face to face. I'm Emily.
Yeah.
We've exchanged some emails. Thank you
Yes, we
so much
have.
for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks
Yeah,
for
and
having me.
yeah, thank you. And we have, gosh, I think we had about 24 people registered. It looks like maybe half of them are logged in. We're still getting the other panelists logged
Okay,
in.
great.
So I'm going to be in the background here, just making sure that our other panelists can access it as well. But
Sure.
everyone, welcome. This is my most favorite event to host. I love to hear from our business owners, from past FranNet clients. I love just the candor and the transparency. I never know what's going to come out. We don't know if it's been a great day as a business owner. Maybe it's been a really challenging day as a business owner, but we're here to just share experience and the truth. So, John, if you could kick us off, tell us a little bit about you, what you were doing prior to your engagement with FranNet, and what you're doing now.
Okay, sure. I'm John Bossy. I recently retired from the military. So I was in the Marine Corps for 23 years. And I retired in December, and around that time frame, I guess in November, October or November, I think I met Blair. Started corresponding with him about franchise opportunities. And I had always wanted to own a business. I had always looked into franchises, but I never really knew how to start and how to even proceed once I found something that I thought I might like. So Blair was instrumental in getting me on the right track and just kind of talking me through the process and the procedures and getting everything straightened out. And then he presented me with numerous options of franchises that were possibilities for me. We ultimately came down to a decision on the junk luggers, which is where I am now. So I purchased 2 territories in Portland and Beaverton, and in January that happened. So now I'm in the process of working through the on-ramp, and I'll start in May. We'll actually launch in May. So right now I'm just in the process with COVID and all of working through the logistics that are slightly problematic because of COVID, but working through the whole on-ramp and startup.
Gotcha. Thank you, John. Emily, has our other panelists made it quite yet?
Still working on it. So if you guys could just continue the conversation, I'll keep working on it.
Got it. Okay, so there are a couple other panelists we're trying to get on. They're having a little bit of trouble logging in. The way this is designed, so John obviously is brand new to this. He just finished researching franchises. He just signed his franchise agreements. Obviously is not in business yet, but obviously researched businesses during COVID as well. So he will give you the perspective of, hey, here's what I learned during the research process. Here's what I learned about validating with other franchisees. Here's what I learned about the other franchise that I researched, using franchise attorneys, maybe your funding strategy, John, you can talk about that. And then when the other panelists come online, they are more seasoned and are in business. And so they'll talk to you about, hey, this is what it's like to be in business during these times. But also went through the FranNet process. So there is no agenda to this meeting, which is what makes it fun. And so this meeting is all about you as the guest asking John and the other panelists once they get on, any question that you want, anything about, like I said, the research process, what they learned, why they did it, how they did it, financing methodologies. So like Emily said, this is one of our more fun presentations that Emily and I do here in the Pacific Northwest because we don't get to present. So, so this is kind of a free-for-all. Typically, we would do this this in person. Obviously, we haven't been able to do it for the past year. Actually, I think for all of us, it's been a year to the date. So what it'll be a little bit tricky, so they're not talking over each other. But if you have a question you'd like to ask John and the other panelists once they're on, just unmute yourself and ask away. So, and if there's any types of questions that aren't being asked, I will ask them to kind of get them going. So
yeah. Also, if you are in a noisy place and you don't want to unmute yourself, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Blair and I can read those along. And we do have another panelist that was able to log in, Len. There we are. Hi, Len. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. And thanks for your keeping at it through those IT issues. Len, will you please take a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you were doing prior to engaging with FranNet and what you're doing now.
Good morning, everybody. We live in the Pacific Northwest, like most everybody, I think, on this call. We, about 35, 40 years of retail experience, different levels, regional director roles, store sales, district, regional sales, store operations. So my background has been in retail and retail leadership my entire career. Last March went through a layoff, and was just at a point after that layoff, and so I kind of started to make decisions. Do I kind of continue my retail career, or do I move into something a little different to kind of close out my working life? And kind of made the decision to go to work for myself, and felt like it was a perfect time, the right time to do it. And that was all around February of last year, and COVID hit, and that kind of put a little crimp in the system for a couple months. But had worked with FranNet for a couple different FranCorp for a couple different situations, and went through the whole franchise process of kind of exploring different opportunities, and looked at quite a few. I've got a little different perspective, because I've really, in all honesty, started looking 3 years ago for different franchise opportunities, and found this managed mode where I'm at now. Back in January, December of last year, Charlie presented it to me, and it just checked off a lot of my boxes. And I probably looked at 15, 20 other different franchise opportunities over the last couple of years. And after I got this layoff last March, this was, that's when I really kind of decided where I needed to go and where I wanted to go. And so started exploring. COVID kind of slowed things down, but finally got to October of this year, opened my doors in October. We're into our 6th month of business now, and so far it's been a pretty good ride. So a little bit about me and where we've been and what we've been doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Len. So we've got John, who just signed and is targeting, John, I think you said maybe a May opening. We've got Len, who's been in business for 6 months. And our third panelist, hi, Guillaume. Thank you so much for joining us and for your persistence through the IT issues. I'd love to introduce Guillaume. And Guillaume, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what you were doing prior to business ownership, working with FranNet, what you're doing now, and please let us know how long you've been in business. Oh, you're muted, Guillaume. Although it shows, I show you as being unmuted.
Yep.
Shoot, still can't hear you. We're having all kinds of IT issues. Maybe Guillaume, I can troubleshoot that. I do see a question. Satya asked you, Len, what kind of franchise you got started? So you did tell us the name of the business, but can you tell us a little bit about the service it provides?
It's a commercial landscaping maintenance business. So it's really based off of, really focused on business to business, and a little different model where you don't have the investment of actual equipment and landscapers and employees. We actually use outside vendors and subcontract the work out. So mostly focused on, probably 90% of my customers are commercial, and we actually do pick up a little bit of residential landscaping.
Got it.
Great. So yeah, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any question you want of John and Len and Guillaume. Figure out why Guillaume's audio is not coming through. But feel free to ask away.
Len, I actually have a question for you. It sounds like you had looked at many different franchise options over the years. How were you able to come to a decision for managed mode?
It was, there was a lot of boxes to check off. And, number one for me was the franchisor. So, what after learning about them, what was important to me is it a franchisor that I feel like I can work with? Do they have the same values, kind of the same goals and expectations, those types of things that I feel like I'd be a good fit. So that was important to me. And the guys at Managed Mode are just, they're just really, really good individuals. And they've been in business for a while. And so that attracted me. I think the other piece for me was wasn't looking to have a lot of employees. So kind of the business model around not having and using subcontractors. That was another box that checked off for me. That was really, really important. So, those were probably two of the biggest things that stuck out to me. I wasn't interested in any type of retail environment where I had to lease retail spaces. I didn't want the retail hours any longer. Stores that were open, 60, 70 hours a week. So from a personal perspective, kind of a work-life balance, this fit really well. It was a little bit of a risk. I was franchisee number one for Managed Mode. They just started franchising last year. And, but at the end of the day, the model fit, and going back to originally, what was really important to me that was the owners, and was the support going to be in place, and where they really believed in supporting the franchisees. And I didn't have a lot that was number one to kind of prove that out, but just really felt good about the owners of Managed Mode. And that was really it that finally got me to kind of pull the trigger.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. And I see, before I go to the next question, the chat, I would like to, hopefully we can hear from Guillaume. Guillaume, can we hear you now?
I don't know.
Yes.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Guillaume.
Well, so as far as, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. As far as my background, as you can tell, I'm not coming from the IT world, because, all based on difficulties I have to just link on my call. I used to work for Nike. I worked for Nike for almost 16 years until back in 2015. And then when I was invited to lead the company in that time, like anybody else, I guess, we were basically, with my wife, we were considering whether, maybe you can tell by my accent that I'm not, I'm from Europe, from Spain. So at that time, with my wife and I, we had to make a first decision was whether we want to stay in the United States or not. So we answered yes to that question. And the second question was whether I want to pursue my career, stay in the corporate world, or just move and start my own thing, right? So in that question, I think that Emily helped us to answer that question. Thank you, Emily, because we start to work with FranNet, and based on our profile or preference, etc. Emily presented us a few options. Remember, we're talking about back in 2015. First one was main cheese. I remember, the ice cream. There was also a gym concept called Club Pilates. And there was also a haircut concept. I think was great clips. And the last option that we were presented, which is actually the one that eventually we chose, was Hand and Stone, which is massage and facial spas. I hope that those who are listening to me, you are familiar with that brand. I really, really hope that you're familiar with that brand, Hand and Stone. So we do the sort of a kind of a due diligences. I think I always say to Emily that we were a little bit, I won't say reckless, but we were a little bit bold, right? So we like so much the people of Hand and Stone when we met them, and the concept, that perhaps we didn't dive too deep into all the numbers, and we connect with a few franchisees, which is highly recommendable for anyone who wants to try to start a franchise, to connect with people who are already inside. We did that, but not really with a lot of people, just a couple of them. And yeah, we, in really record time, I think that we hold a record in terms of where the moment that we sign the franchise to the moment that we open our first spa. In June 16, we opened our first location in Portland Northwest. 1 year later, we opened a second location, and then 2 years later, we purchased a third location. So right now we are owning 3 hand and stone massage and facial spas in the Portland metro area. So I don't know if it was too long or too short, or I don't know. You tell me.
That was great. Thank you. And I love the variety that we have with the panelists here in terms of the time that your business has been open. We've got some variety, also multiple locations and various professional backgrounds before entering business ownership. So one of the questions in the chat, and maybe John, will start with you, is who did you involve in your due diligence prior to signing contracts? CPAs, lawyers, etc.
I hired a lawyer, a local franchise lawyer that I found, who did a lot of really good work for me as far as diving into the franchise agreement and really pulling out a lot of details. And he actually pulled out a lot of details that I think a CPA would have probably identified. So I did not hire a CPA or anything. I just had the lawyer and kind of worked through it that way.
Thanks. And Len, what professionals did you engage with?
Yeah, I virtually did the same thing. Hired an attorney to go through the franchise agreement, and yeah, we were able to catch some things and that we felt that needed to be changed, and we asked for it, and a couple of those things were addended or amended or changed. So anybody, I'd highly recommend invest whatever you need to invest from an attorney perspective. Just I'm glad I did it at the end of the day. I did reach out to a CPA and kind of worked with them on the pro forma and the business side, and based off the numbers that I was given out of the FDD, and so CPA helped me out with that, and quite honestly used a couple family and friends to bounce stuff off of that had experience in business and what that would look like. So I kind of used a couple different various groups in the decision process.
Got it. And Guillaume, what type of professionals did you engage with?
Well, it's similar to my partners. I mean, I didn't connect with any CPA, but I work with a lawyer. I basically, and we actually made some amendments to the franchisee contract that they were presenting us, and again, depends also on the franchise that you guys are going to be working. Some of them might be more flexible than others. In our case, they were flexible. We changed some clauses, and I think it was good, right? So definitely, and I will recommend also, if possible, to connect with a CPA. I didn't, but it will be recommendable.
Okay.
I got a question for you guys.
All right. Sorry, one thing that I did do that helped out quite a bit was in my franchise, or in the FDD, I went through and pulled out current owners, and I probably called 5 to 10 current owners. And I also called some who were no longer owners and asked them why they weren't with the organization anymore, as far as, if it was, what their perspective of the business was. So that kind of helped quite a bit to fill out a whole picture of what I was getting into.
So that's a great leadway into the question I was just going to ask, John. Was the most important part of this research process, at least that we try to emphasize to our clients, is talking to franchisees. So when you three of you did your research, did you find that the franchisees that you spoke to were amenable to speaking with you, and were they able to answer just about any question that you asked?
So I'm gonna answer that because I fail in that what you're just saying, which I think to your point, I highly recommend to do it, to contact with franchises, to talk with them. And I failed because I only spoke with 2 of them, because I found that for whatever reason, I mean, I reached people who were not very available, right? You know, life happens, so people have other issues, other things to do, other things to do, and they don't always are available for us. But and then I just, again, you just talk with two franchises, only 2, and I think that I should have talked with more people. I mean, eventually it worked well, but I think that my recommendation is don't give up. I mean, keep trying. And I think what I think John said before about talking not just with members of a chain or the franchise, but also with people who already left. That's really wise and smart. I mean, I strongly recommend that. And again, think about that. Not everybody will be available. Not everybody will be willing, but just try, keep insisting, because it's very important to have an insight of people who are basically in the chain right now. Sorry. That.
And Len, you were the first franchisee with Manage Mode.
So
that's really, it's obviously it's pretty unique. So what was that part of the research like for you?
Yeah, that was, it was a little different, but I kind of took the same approach. You know, I didn't have other franchisees to reach out to, or even, you know, ex-franchisees, but I had I was on purpose to have a lot of conversations, not only with the owners, but some of the operational people. And what I was really, I mean, because if you look at it, it's no different than if you're interviewing for a job, right? It's, well, you're trying to sell yourself, because the franchisor is looking at you that way, but you're trying to make sure if it's a good fit. So I had a lot of different conversations with other people within the organization, and you know, I always try to see, did the messaging align, did the stories align, did the strategies align, right? So for me, you know, it did, right? So a lot of the business model and how they went after it aligned, from the owners all the way down to some operational people, account managers that were here in Seattle. So I had to take a little different approach, but I also would tell you, do your due diligence. Probably one of the most important things you can do is reach out. If you have the opportunity, reach out to franchisees. Like I said, been looking at businesses, franchises since 2016. I don't know, I kind of lost count, maybe 12 to 15. And that's for a lot of different reasons. Some of them weren't right. I ended up getting another job and going back to work in my career. But the biggest piece with some of them was just doing that due diligence, where, you know, the franchisees were saying something totally different than what the franchisors were saying. And it wasn't playing out like you were being told. So highly recommend take the time to do that due diligence.
And John, it sounds like you're the one panelist that was able to access the most franchise owners, either current or past, in your due diligence. Can you provide some examples of the kinds of things that you were able to learn to help you come to a decision around that opportunity?
Sure. I think my experience, one of the reasons I decided to go with the junk luggers is because they were very transparent, both in their FDD and in everything I learned about them. And that was reinforced when I talked to each franchisee owner that was current. They all kind of said the same, they all said the same things. So it was, there was nothing that was popping up from the franchisee owners that was different. And the one I attempted to talk to 2 previous owners. One, we just didn't ever connect. And the other one I had about an hour conversation with her, and everything that she told me lined up with everything that I already knew about the organization. It just wasn't a great fit for her, and unfortunately didn't work out. But that was the biggest thing that I took away from talking with all the franchisees, was understanding the transparency and understanding that what the franchisor was saying was the same thing that the franchisees were saying, which is key for me.
Good. We got another question coming from Josh to the panel. What was your biggest regret, biggest learning that you wish you knew going in? And we'll start with John. We'll go back to you.
Ooh, I'm so young in this. I don't have any right now.
Not giving you any time, John. Come on.
I know. I think I would have. My regret, honestly, is I would have started the process earlier, because I didn't start it until October, so I probably would have started it sooner, just to get the ball rolling a little faster. That's really the only thing that I would say.
Len?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Honestly, I mean, kind of like John, I'm 6 months into this, but I don't know that I have any regrets. It's funny, I was talking to someone the other day and I said, God, I wish I would have found managed mode 10 years ago. Like, it would have just, I can see it already. It would have changed things dramatically. So I really don't have any regrets at this point. I just maybe too new into it, even 6 months into it. But, you know, for me, I wish I would have found managed mode 10 years ago, quite honestly.
And Guillaume, how about you?
I'm the old guy. So I was one regret.
Come on in, guys.
Oh, hang on a second. Let me mute somebody who's got some background noise. Okay, go ahead, Guillaume.
So as I said before, we opened our first location in June 16, and we opened our second location in April 17. We actually we purchased two licenses when we enter in the because we kind of have that idea that we wanted to scale the business, right? So we at that point we had resources to do it, and we wanted to do it right. So I think that with our second location we went too fast. It's almost 9 months from one to another. I think that we were still learning on the first, and we were already having to focus on the second one, right? So I think most of franchise concepts that you guys you're gonna look at, they are scalable. Like once you have a successful story, why not growing? But my regret was I probably have taken more time. I mean, the second, it was a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure on ourselves that we could avoid. We just wait maybe 2 years until we open the second location. Right? So that's something that I really regret.
And I'm just going to keep asking questions until other people jump in or go to the chat. So John, a question for you. And I think Len really set this up beautifully. An expression I heard Len say a handful of times was the business really checked the boxes. And Len, I heard you give some examples, like sounds like you didn't want a retail space, or I heard something around, a preference around employees. And so that is something that Blair, Charlie, or myself, we kind of help you identify the boxes. John, what were some of the boxes for you? What were you looking for in a business?
I was looking for, I didn't really want a retail space either. That wasn't something I really felt I needed to have. I wanted a company that had a good culture, that was, transparent. And really the thing that I liked about the junk luggers was they have an eco component to them. The junk removal is, the purpose of it is to not take anything to a landfill. It's to reuse everything or recycle. So I really liked the eco component of it. And Blair and I had discussed a few different eco-friendly businesses to look at. And just like I said, all the points before about junk luggers and the culture were really the big blocks that I wanted to check in my research.
Thank you. I would say from past panel discussions we've had, one of the more popular questions people ask is, how did you fund the business? So I'd be curious if you're willing to share, did you do a 401k rollover, an SBA loan, et cetera? So Guillaume, we'll maybe start with you. Are you comfortable sharing high level how you funded your business?
No problem. Well, we have we have a portfolio of stocks my wife and I, Monica and I, in UBS. It's the financial company who manage our stocks. And basically, we did a line of credit, right, back up by those stocks, right? So actually, we self-finance ourselves. We didn't need an SBA, basically, or stocks were basically allowing to do that line of credit. So that was a good thing.
And Len, how about you?
I again, it was during COVID, so there were some things. I was going to use some investments with it, but then it just became advantageous to go with an SBA. And in my previous business, I had an SBA, and so we ended up going down with an SBA loan. So worked out well.
Got it. And John?
I looked at all those avenues. I tried to do the line of credit on a portfolio that I had, but it didn't fund it the way I wanted it to. And then I looked at an SBA, but what I eventually settled on was rolling a 401k over. My wife and I have a couple different 401ks, so we used one of those and rolled it over in the Rob's program and self-funded that way, which has turned out to be a really great program.
Excellent.
You're good.
Check in the chat. Yeah. I'm actually going to kind of go back to the second part of Josh's question, with biggest learning that you wish you knew going in.
Okay. Well, I think that that's our type of business is very intensive on personal, right? So we, for example, I just give you an example. The difference between a gym and a spa is that in a gym you hire a monitor, and the monitor basically have the classes for 20 or 25 people, right? So maybe with a relatively small group of monitors, you can cover all your needs from a hiring point of view. When it comes to a spa like us, where we do massage and facials, it's basically one-on-one, right? So basically you have clients, and every client is attended by one specific massage therapist, right? So for me, the type of business that I'm basically owning is very intense on on people, and there's a lot of HR situations. It's part of a beauty of owning a business, right? But it's a lot. I mean, we in each of our locations we might have between 18 to 30 people working for us, and that's something that, to be honest, I mean, I'm not sure if I will have changed my decision, right? But that was something that I kind of learned as I move forward.
Yeah, for me, it just as much as I talked earlier, I really wasn't looking to have a lot of employees, and this model really fits that, where I can grow and expand it to a decent revenue level with 1 or 2 employees. But what's so different, and it's been a learning curve for me, is working with subcontractors, because all my landscapers are basically subcontractors, and my whole background is leading teams, working with employees, and just how do you talk to a private a landscaper that's subcontract, and how do you treat them? And you can't treat them like employees, and you have to be careful in your wording. So that's been a little different, because every one of my landscapers that I work with, they're subcontractors, and they also have their own business. So I'm working with individuals that are supplying basically a service to me, for me, that also have their own businesses in the same industry. So that's been a little bit of a learning curve for me. But you know, so far it's played out well.
John, do you have anything to say to this question?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm learning, my learning curve is pretty steep. I have a lot of my experiences in operations and management, that type of stuff. The financials are a steep learning curve for me, but the biggest thing that I'm struggling through is the HR piece, because I'm in the process of hiring people, which in the military, we haven't ever had to do, as well as paying for hours for people as they work, because I'm used to just people showing up and working, and time keeping was not a part of the military. So that's a big one for me.
Got it. Thanks. And one of the questions, what's the most fun aspect of being a business owner?
Well, for me, obviously, is this, you manage your own schedule, right? So, I mean, that's everything, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been already away from the corporate world for a few years, right? So I almost don't remember when I used to be having to work 8 to 8 sometimes, and there is no much flexibility or freedom. Basically, you were right now. You know, it's, if anything, for me, it's like that I own my own schedule. I own my own time. And that's very important for me.
Len, how about you?
I would agree. In all my due diligence of talking to different franchisees, that's one of the things you hear, right? Is you're going to go to work for yourself and you have time, and your time is your time. And but I would totally agree. What's so different for me is that my time is my time, and do I have appointments I need to go to? Are there things that I need to do? Yeah, but you know, my work time is just so much different than what I'm used to. You know, I haven't punched a clock in a lot of years, but at the same time, you know, I'm not there 8 to 8 anymore, right? I'm working in different hours, and I like to say I'm working when I want to work, but there's freedom with going into business for yourself that you just don't get when you're an employee. So I would totally agree.
I would say the same thing. Working for myself. The other thing, I'm working when I want to, but also because I want to, because I want this to succeed. That's really, you know, I like learning all this new stuff because it's fun. So
good.
And we've got at least half of the people that are joining us today are still exploring their options. They may be currently looking at some businesses that were recommended to them by FranNet, or maybe they're not even at that point yet. What advice would you give someone that is still exploring this as an option? And this is open to all the panelists, of course.
You know, I would say be really clear to yourself what you want, right? And then you talked about the boxes, right? Make sure that you've got the boxes lined up, and really, you know, be honest with yourself what you want. For me, it would have been very easy to go back into a retail type setting, you know, go into some type of fast food, anything like that. But I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I didn't want. And it took me a while to get there. So if you're there, great. If you're not, just be really, really honest with yourself, and be clear, like, what are those boxes you want checked off. I think that's where it led me to where I'm at today.
Thanks. John or Guillaume, any advice?
John?
Sure. I would agree with Len. I mean, I did a lot of soul searching, I guess, before I arrived at this. I knew I wanted to have a business or something in that realm, that was kind of always my dream was to own my own business. I just didn't know. I had kind of written it off as something that I couldn't do because I didn't know the steps to do it. And I didn't have a great idea of some app that I could develop that would make $1 million. So I had kind of written it off and was going down another path. And then, Blair and I talked, and that kind of opened that door. But after that, so after I understood that what I needed to do from Blair, it still then required a lot of research and due diligence, and still more soul searching about what specifically I really wanted to do with business. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I'm going to say anything new. I guess the obviously the first, I would say, the biggest decision is if you really want to have your own thing, right? Your own business, right? So, and as glamorous as might sound at the beginning, hey, you own your own destiny, you have your own stuff, fine, that's great. But yeah, I mean, it has some advantages, but it has also some challenges, right? Especially when you start, right? And I would say that your mindset needs to be really, really, there will be some challenges around the way. That's for sure. Everyone has challenges. I don't know anybody who's been starting in this, franchise or any new business that will have challenges, especially at the beginning, right? So, and you need to be ready and convinced that that's the way to go, as opposed to your regular paycheck every 2 weeks or every month or whatever you need it. And it's a different thing, right? So then once you have decided that, then choosing the right franchise, again, I'm probably not the best person to talk about that, because I was not, I didn't do all the due diligences that maybe I should have done. I mean, again, as I said before, the end result was great, fantastic, but yeah, I would say that just don't do what I did. Just think about it, and make sure that you choose the right partner. Yeah, that's it.
So that kind of leads me into a question, until we see some other questions come through the chat or somebody asks away. One, why did you choose franchising as your business methodology for going into business? And two, did you ever think that the business that you actually purchased would have been the business?
Yeah, for me, I had opened another business back in 2013, and ended up being a frozen yogurt shop that we opened, and we built it from ground up. And it's just something that I saw years ago, a self-serve frozen yogurt shop in Texas, and came back and told my wife on a trip, came back to Seattle and said, we're opening one. And it took me a couple of years to do it, but we did it. In 2013, we opened it, and we ended up selling it in 2019. But for me, franchising, so I had gone through the experience of building something myself. And, you hear a lot about, well, why would you be paying someone royalties? Why would you, do the expense? And why would you, the expense of buying a territory and all those things? You could probably just do this yourself. And well, my experience opening that yogurt shop, and it was a successful one. And but there's a lot of work in building something from the ground up, that when I thought it would be relatively easy, I mean, it was tough. There was a huge learning curve. I mean, this has been a learning curve, but when you just go from 0 to 100 miles an hour when you're opening your own business, it's a huge learning curve, and it's a huge expense. So for me, when I got to the point of a couple of years ago going, you know what, I know I want to be in business for myself at some point, and that's how I'm going to finish out my career. Like, why wouldn't I just utilize find a model, find a company that has the experience, that has a proven model, and utilize that versus doing something from ground up. And so for me, franchising just made sense. And even when I look at my royalty fees, which I consider for managed mode to be pretty good, when I look at the expense of opening that yogurt shop and the infrastructure that I had to build into that business. You know, I don't have to do this with my current franchisee. That was all built in, and part of those royalty fees right now, I'm just kind of considering what would have been an expense if I was doing it myself. So that's how I kind of came to like franchising and choosing where I'm at today. So hopefully that answers your question.
And the second part, would you have chosen, or Blair, how did you phrase that? Do you think you would have chosen?
You would have chosen the business that you ended up choosing?
No. It's just, yeah, again, it checked off the boxes. I didn't know that I started looking to services businesses, but I don't know that I would ever got into like landscape maintenance. I don't know that I was looking at that. So yeah, absolutely.
Good. Josh is asking,
yeah.
or John, do you want to go ahead?
Nope.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead. I would, did I ever think I would get into junk lugging? No. And I know Blair and I, we talked, you and I talked about this quite a bit. Not the sexiest sounding job around, but it's really more about the company culture and all of that. That's what made the difference for me. And I think, what was the first part of the question about why franchising instead of starting your own?
Correct. Yeah. Why'd you choose franchising as the business methodology?
All right. So for me, like I said, I have an operations background, and I'm used to in the military getting a kind of a playbook, an SOP of some sort, and taking that and running with that, which is kind of translated to me over to franchising. So it's a proven system. It's worked in numerous other locations. So as long as I have all the knowledge that has already been gathered by the franchisor, that's what I liked about the methodology.
So it leads into a question that is coming in from Josh. Can you quickly describe the onboarding / education you were provided by the franchisor?
Do you want me to do that since I'm in it?
Sure,
right
why don't
now?
you start? Yeah.
Okay. So the junk luggers onboarding process, it's 8 to 10 weeks is what they say. I'm a little longer because of COVID, but it culminates with a 1-week training evolution at the junk luggers headquarters, and then the previous 7 weeks you have a project management tool that's online, and they have basically laid out everything they need you to do by week. So I go in, every week, and I'm working through the checklist of things to do, which is everything from the financials to business development to ordering my trucks and that kind of stuff. So it's really I really enjoy it because it's very very much a process that you can follow.
Yeah, I went through something very similar. Of course, COVID kind of threw a wrench into it, but I went through 40 hours of online, video conferencing training, going through some of the operational pieces of the business and the different platforms that we use, and then 40 a full week of training within your territory, and then there's ongoing training that goes on a monthly basis. So that's the training I've gone through.
And Gam, how about you?
So, it's been a long time ago, but basically, if everything started with my wife and I, we spent a couple of days in the headquarters of Stone in the East Coast. And then after that, we have basically support from the operations team along the way since the moment that we sign the lease to the moment that we actually open. It happened in 12 weeks. We have there was a clear calendar and specific support and training from the corporate to us, to our manager, and also to our therapists. So they have a merch shops who actually came and educated the team for 1 week before we opened.
Thank you.
And
Charlie, can you think of any questions that the group isn't asking that are common from your clients?
Can I ask one follow-up to that last one really quick before Charlie jumps in? So based on that education you received up front, I guess this probably doesn't include you, John, sorry, but for the other guys who have been in business a bit longer, like, have you had to reach out to the franchisor at any point with some sort of issue, or did you work with them to get through any real specific challenges? How did they work with you through those types of issues, if you did?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I mean, yes, I mean, our franchise, we have a regional operations manager that basically we in our 3 locations, we have a bi-weekly meeting with her and our 3 managers, where we have the opportunity to, if we have any challenge or any issue, we can, and she's also helping us to, to share best practices from other franchisees, etc. Right? So, and yeah, I mean, there's an ongoing communication with corporate. I mean, just as an example, we recently changed our POS software, which has been an interesting process. And again, I mean, it's always traumatic, a change like that. And we have had corporate supporting the whole thing on basically 24/7 basis, right? So, yeah.
And I do want to be respectful of our panelists' time, because I know a few of them have 12 o'clock meetings, so we were going to wrap up at 11:55. Charlie, did you come up with some burning?
So I have
sure.
60 seconds. Okay, with the show of your hands, so both hands is 10. On a scale of 1 being low to 10 being high, how important was it to you to have and continue to enjoy the support of your spouse? Sometimes we work with clients and the spouses, they're a little leery about the whole thing. Other times they're right next to them, very supportive. How important would you say it is for a new business owner to enjoy the full support of your spouse or partner?
That's not an Oregon Duck thing, right, Len?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
It's critical. I mean, we actually jump in this together. It was not that she followed me. We jumped together, holding hands, and she's full-time employee, as I am full-time employee. So.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for joining us today, and congratulations on your business.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And for those of you who joined us, thanks for spending your time with us. I hope you found some value and got some new insights. John, Len, and Guillaume, thank you. And
thank you
congratulations.
Very much. Thanks for all your time.
All right, everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.